Here I am. Awfully good to see you. See so many friends and some people I don't know as well. We had sign up for this. I think around 60, maybe more than 60 people, and from 9 different countries, which is really a wonderful thing. It's great to think of this movement as being international. That's certainly how I think of it. And I thought I'd start by, well, first of all, what the frame of the meeting is that I'm going to share a little bit, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A, and then we're going to have breakouts where you'll be able to meet each other a bit, just small groups, and reflect on some of this, I think in an inspiring way. We're hoping to inspire you more than anything. And uh, and then we'll have a closing, and we'll be sending you a survey at the end. And I'm really interested in launching a movement, whatever that means. And I'm excited about it. And I want to share with you at least my thoughts, and also pull from any and all of you what it is that you think might work. But I want to talk about some difficult things around fiat. Some of you know what it is. It means fiduciary in all things. And I heard someone say, "Hey, what does fiduciary mean?" And so that's one of the things we'll be addressing in the movement. Fiduciary primarily means trustworthy. But the way that I want to talk about fiat first in a number of ways, and then think about ways that we can move forward together. One of the things that I wanted to start with is just the book. If you want to know what fiat is, this is really the best introduction to it. And this is my new book, The 3 Domains of Freedom. And what's I think wonderful about the introduction is that fiat is really about delivering much greater levels of freedom throughout society by addressing issues or problems that we find largely institutionalized in our in corporations and governments and nonprofits. And so the book addresses freedom from an experiential standpoint, as opposed to who's free and what country or what philosophy and all that. It really addresses it from the experiential standpoint. So you have the experience, the first domain of freedom. In the book, it's an experiential book. It's relatively brief and easy to read, and it's meant to stimulate thinking. I think of it as a profound book and as a book of wisdom. So it leads through each moment is yours, and what does that experience feel like as freedom? And then your life is yours. And many of you know the work that I've done in the financial services industry, which has been the life planning work, and with the notion that our goal is not to be managing the money particularly. I mean, that's part of it, but really our goal is to deliver our clients into their dreams of freedom. And so your life is yours is part of that movement. And we know now that you can deliver it, that to pretty much everybody. So it's a pretty extraordinary thing. And then we move on to the 3rd domain of freedom, which is civilization. And civilization, we all go, "Oh yeah, I don't know about that one," particularly in America after the election. But we're all seeing, whatever country we're in, we're seeing problems and challenges and difficulties. So what I do with civilization is, first of all, celebrate. So you get the experience of what freedom is in that way. And then from that, look, from that stance of those 3 domains of freedom, look at what are the problems and how would you solve them? And what I came up with, and I'm going to share a little bit of the background of that, the history of that. What I came up with is, I think, a solution. And that solution is what we call fiat. And it's a single sentence piece of legislation, which would require all institutions to place the truth ahead of their own self-interest. Isn't that pretty obvious? Why would we ever set up anything any institution that wouldn't put the truth above their own self-interest, and to put democracy above their own self-interest, to put humanity and the planet. And so it really to try to create a trustworthy civilization. Civilization is who we are. It's who we're meant to be. We craft it. And so right now we see a civilization that's rather chaotic and often mean-spirited, and we're not so happy with it. But that's not the way it has to be. We can create that. We have created that. In fact, we've created this. So just briefly, how this came about for me, I was, kind of finishing with the life planning movement, and semi-retiring and all of that, and when the banking crisis came along, and I took it personally because it was financial services is my arena, and that seemed to be where a lot of the problems were happening. So I wrestled with it a lot. And one of the things that I got to do, because I'm asked to speak in a variety of settings fairly frequently, I got to do a world tour, which was very cool. And I went on tour exploring with people from many different countries, rich and poor, democratic, autocratic. I was in China. I was in Hong Kong during the Umbrella Revolution, and um, and asked people everywhere what they would like, what they would see, because my intuition was that we all want the same thing. And sure enough, that's what I found. People wanted kindness, people wanted democracy, people didn't want corruption, they didn't want such great inequality. They wanted a planet that was sustainable, and they wanted trustworthiness in the media, in their news sources, and in all forms of communication, and all their institutions. So that was encouraging. And I began to reflect, going back to the economics that I studied, I minored in when I was at Harvard, and I started to think, economically about why is it that things are going a little bit crazy? And I went back to kind of the beginning of this explosion of growth, and that was roughly 250 years ago. And I asked a very simple question, which is, how is it that if this is the best system we could come up with, that we don't, after 250 years of enormous growth, we don't find at the top of every hierarchy of power the best of humanity, our wisdom and our compassion? Why is it that we don't find that? In fact, I'm hard pressed to find it anywhere, right? And I think most of us feel that way ourselves. And a lot of it has to do with this notion of what is fiduciary. That as we've evolved over these 250 years, we have defined only one real fiduciary responsibility for the corporations in particular, and that is to their shareholders. So that's and one of the things I've wondered about, and I have my friend Julian Powell here, who I've talked with about leadership things, and how can you be a leader if the only thing you're leading toward is money? How can that possibly be? So uh, so one of the things that I began to realize right now, I mean, we've had periods of optimism and pessimism over these 250 years. I've certainly lived through a period that was tremendously optimistic when I was a boy, and even as a young man. And we've seemed to have lost a lot of that recently. And we're very concerned about what's happening. And what I realized, again, thinking economically about this, is that in business, we talk about bringing things to scale. Is it scalable? And in an environment which is largely global, we're talking with our large institutions about scaling to a global size, basically. And there's a problem with that. I mean, it's a wonderful thing because we're all together. I mean, this is a time for humanity to come together as opposed to just simply nation states. But the problem with it is that there are these things that economists have talked about for decades, and that is negative externalities that come with every institutional structure. So if you're bringing your business or anything institutional, if you're scaling it globally, you're also scaling the negative externalities. So what do we have? We've got global warming, climate change, whatever you call it, that is threatening to burn up the planet. We have news media and communication, social media and all that, that essentially can be bought. And isn't that interesting that bot and bot are the same, have the same sound to them. We have a democracy that looks like it may be failing. And all of these things and many more. And right now we're terrified. We're going in, we've been worried about these things. And of course, the truth, not having the truth, not being able to trust anything. And now we're finding the next piece is AI. And the next terror thing that we'll be scared of will be perhaps bioengineering, but it's coming at a more and more rapid pace because of the globalization and because of the systems that we have in place to globalize, to bring these things to scale. And so it got me thinking, so why is this happening and what is it about the base? There's got to be a simple solution to this. If it's happening everywhere, and we all feel that the problems in the world are all connected, and we've all got our different theories. And I certainly have mine, but what I wanted to do was come up with a solution. So if there's a problem at the base, and the base is when we first perhaps incorporate, if we look mainly at corporations, we can look at governments and nonprofits as well, but I don't think I have time for that here today. But when we look at that at the base, we give a corporation this enormous power right from the beginning of limited liability. So their investors can't get sued for a whole bunch of things, right? Enormous power that none of the rest of us have, but they have it. And then we give them the power, in addition, to attract tremendous amounts of capital. So we give them the ability to leverage their ideas and their movement in the direction that they want to go in. And then we give them the further ability to leverage with massive amounts of debt. And then we give them the further ability to leverage through their communications, whether it's buying media or their own advertisements or nonprofits through communications. So they have this enormous power of leverage and everything. And one of the things that I put on social media occasionally is that just to remind everybody, they're not human, these institutions. The Supreme Court gave them certain rights to be like persons, but they're not. They don't breathe. They're not human, but they have much more power than any one of us. So the question was not, there's been a lot of great things, right? Here we are, we're gathering from all over the world together. What an amazing thing this is. And, you can see from my white hairs, I've been around a few decades. A lot of my ancestors weren't able to live this long. So there are amazing things that have come out, and here we all are together, which is just terrific. But what I realized was that there must be something wrong at the base of the system that we've created, and maybe just a small tweak at the base would change everything. And that's what fiat is. And I think it does. And what fiat essentially does is that it requires every institution, government, nonprofit, and corporation to place the truth, the planet, humanity, and democracy ahead of their own self-interest. It's really that simple. And it's a requirement, unlike that's the way I think it has to be, unlike the wonderful work that the B Corps are doing and ESG has done, and even the Business Roundtable has dipped into. This would be a requirement so that we would know that our institutions were acting in a trustworthy way toward us. So there are a couple more things I want to say because I want to address the kind of obvious question about all of this, which is, and I get it, right? I got it. Kathy threw it at me just the other day, one of them. Hey, George, this is really pie in the sky, right? And I get from other people, I go, well, this is pretty utopian, George. And utopian is not something that's good, right? It's got something that is means that it's unrealistic. So I want to address both of those. They're actually two separate questions. Is it utopian? Well, if utopian means a perfect system, no, of course not. Or a perfect life, what I'm hoping is that we can design something, and it seems to me that we can, that we aren't suddenly running after the next AI or the next bioengineering or the next global warming, that the system itself is functional in taking care of those problems as they arise. So it's creating a system that might be sustainable for us for countless generations going forward. So that's what I'm really looking at. Can we do that? And if so, how would that arise? And if that were the case, is it utopian? Well, we're still, we still are human beings. We still age. We still have problems with our adolescent kids. We still have We're still going to have large institutions that we struggle with now and then. There's still going to be problems that we're going to be dealing with as a human species, but so much more trust in our environment and so much more confidence that we are together with so many other people, with all other people in trying to make this work. So I think of it not as utopian, but as creating a system, just a system. That's what we created 250 years ago. That's what we created when we began with limited liability. It was us, we created it. So here, I'm just saying, let's tweak it and let's make it so it really works. So the other question is the pie in the sky. Okay, so pie in the sky kind of implies that it's, some utopian dream way out there, totally unrealistic and unable to be accomplished. Many of you have been with me over the last X number of years in the life planning movement. And if not, many others of you have heard of it, know about it, and feel its value. And we do something quite extraordinary in the life planning movement. Nobody comes into your financial office, advisory office, uh, really living a completely fulfilled life. It's quite astonishing. And when you ask them really deep relationship questions, you realize that, and they realize it. And they realize it in a way that sometimes brings tears to their eyes, but often brings the surge of energy, realizing, gosh, I haven't done that. And that's what I really want to do. And what we do in that work is we ask them, we paint a picture for them that is so fulfilling, so close to what their heart's dream is that they can't say no to it. And we do this law of two hands, where Louis Volbruch introduced this for us. And, do you want this life, which is your dream of freedom? Or do you want this life, which you have right now? I've never seen anybody choose this life that they have right now. Everybody chooses the dream of freedom. And then what's astonishing from that is that virtually everybody delivers that dream of freedom to themselves with our support in a matter of months, often, certainly within a matter of a few years. And so it's just an extraordinary thing. I encourage you to learn more about it. But what I realized with civilization is we need a dream of freedom that we all gather around. And that dream of freedom, like to our clients, when they walk in, it's pie in the sky. They didn't think, they thought they might do it in retirement. They might do it 30 years from now. They might do it a decade from now. They're certainly not going to do it now. They're certainly not going to do it, as I've seen so many people do it, within the next, 3 weeks, initiate it and make it happen, or get really rolling on it. So pie in the sky isn't really relevant. What's relevant is, do we have a dream that we can gather around? And that's what I've tried to do with Fiat, is create something that we can go, yes, that would work. That would solve the issues that I'm particularly concerned about, and a lot of other issues, by guaranteeing that our institutions are on our side, are on the side of democracy, are on the side of truth, are on the side of humanity, and are on the side of the planet. So the only way I see that we can do this, we're used to thinking that, who can we get to help us with this? And we go to the political sphere usually. That sphere has become extremely codependent. We can pretty much see that our politics in the 21st century is broken. And it's broken because of the huge inequities that exist, the financial inequities, the inequities of power, the inequities in truth and in media. So we're not going to get there very easily. A lot of you were on one side of the more of you were on one side of the election in America than on the other side. And even if you'd won, global warming wouldn't have, global warming plus truth in media plus democracy. How much would we have been able to do? And I think we need a vision that is actually holding us and that isn't dependent on the donor billionaires or the pacts with corporations, but that comes from us, that we build. And so, that's why I say launch Fiat. And it's not launching it looking for the same donors that are supporting one political party or another. It's really launching it as a people's movement, as this is what we want. Doesn't this make sense? And doing it. So one of the things that, you can still say, well, how do you do it? And that's part of the purpose of the call, is to be thinking about that. But one more thing about it, I'd like you to just imagine. So imagine that we do engage around this. And then imagine that sometime, is it 2 years from now? Is it 10 years from now? We look around at the election that's happening and we realize that 20 of the Congress people running for Congress, congressional candidates, are running on a platform that is Fiat. That's their platform. Imagine that. Incredible. And if you had 20, I mean, believe me, the word gets out with that kind of awareness. So the question is, how do we get there? And you can come up with all these obstacles. That's what a client has done all their life. But the most important thing is to build the dream, live into the dream. What is the dream? How does it feel? And then how do we spread that dream? Because I can't do it myself. I've done hundreds, Laura tells me, hundreds of podcasts and interviews and speeches over the last 4.5 years. And I can't do it myself. I need your help. And I need people to be as engaged as you're willing to be, as supportive as you possibly can be. And my hope is that you'll come out of this meeting with a range of possibilities. And we're going to send you a survey at the end of this meeting, giving you an opportunity to share what you would like to do. So a few of the things that we think about, and a few of the things, I mean, some of the things I'm doing, I'm designing a workshop for corporations to take in and deliver the 3 domains leading right to Fiat. I'm doing it as a leadership workshop, starting with B Corps, going to financial services companies and others. One of the things that's cool about a lot of us is that we're fiduciaries. So we can let people know what fiduciary would really mean if we had a society that was fiduciary in all things. Um, uh, One of the things, where did I put that? Yeah. So we're in a gift giving time, and I think one of the most wonderful gifts that you could give, right, is the 3 domains of freedom. And you can give it to all of your I mean, it simplifies your holiday time, because you don't have to buy any other gifts. You can just give that, right? And give it to all your relatives and friends. And it's a beautiful book. It's a calming book in these times where we're all troubled. It really is a balm, not a terrorist bomb, but a balm to the heart. And the other thing, I was thinking about that. So you could give that, but even better, what if you bought in bulk? And we're gonna set this up so you can, and you took a box like this and put it next time you went to I don't know, a community association, a church, a spiritual organization, and just put that box down and put free books. What a wonderful thing to support. We need to get the idea out, and we're going to have, and there are many ways we're thinking of. There are logos we've created that you can put on your headers that would say fiduciary and get people to wonder what it is and have a website beneath it. I'd love to give more speeches. I can only give so many. I'd love to support you to give talks in your places where you can talk as well. So to get more talks would be really exciting as well. And there are many more things. I'm trying to think where we are in the timeline here, probably a little bit beyond where we should be. So I, I think what I want to do now is just pause and toss it to you for chat, Q&A, and then we're going to do a breakout. So we'll do a little bit of Q&A, just if you have, what are the questions that really you don't get right now, that you aren't really clear about? And this is just a launch meeting. It's just an hour. I have my limited piece of time on this. But we have websites. You can go to our website and you'll see my work on social media again and again, promoting all this. Chat, anything you like. And Laura is going to pass those questions off to me if there are questions.
Yeah, so
Laura?
if you have any questions regarding what George just shared, put them down in the simplest terms, and I will share that. But George, I wanted to kind of bring up one that Barry Korb brought up. He said, 2 observations. What is truth? Texas is suing corporations promoting climate change for violating duty to shareholders for focusing on a falsehood not in their interest. Second, interestingly, a financial fiduciary need not act as a fiduciary when negotiating terms of service. Only reasonableness. U.S. system has been based on relying on markets for efficiency and let government actions push for equity or fiat goals. Any
Totally.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. I'm totally with you, Barry. And at the same time, I don't want to get lost in the details of implementation and the details of law right at this moment. What I think is so important is we spread the vision and we spread the inspiration of the vision. But the question of truth is huge. It's something I've certainly given a lot of thought to. And to place the truth ahead of their own self-interest, we need the truth in media and truth throughout if we are to be able to be a democracy. How can you be a democracy without being able to vote on what is true and having an opinion about it? And we've been robbed of that, and it's gotten worse and worse certainly over the last 40 years. So I think that if we have a law that says you have to have the truth, then you look at what are the standards of truth that we have already. We have scientific truth, we've got investigative journalism truth, we've got the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we begin to look at, well, what would it look like in these various contexts? So I want something really simple that everybody can get. And we spread that. And we debate about these things and think about these things. But if you have it as a law and you begin to have it institutionalized, as for instance, B Corps attempt to institutionalize a number of these elements in what they do, then you begin to have structures within the institutions that are beginning to act in ways that make it inevitable, I think, that we would be going much more toward each of these things. It may take a generation to do that. But I think the important thing right now is get the vision so that there isn't all this doubt that we can do it. We can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So George, as a follow-up from Hunter Brownlee, how can we get the truth in our media?
Yeah, again, the how to. Whoops, you just hit Siri somehow. How do you get truth in the media? There are lots of ways. I mean, the media right now is controlled by powerful interests. We had a fairness doctrine in the 80s. You can go back and look at what that was. Why should media that we are using to determine what our vote is not be required to have something like a fairness doctrine? And again, I've given a lot of thought to that. There are many ways of approaching it. I think we get the journalism schools to get going on this and really thinking about it. So you're bringing leaders in who are already, it's in their domain. But a lot of it is reducing the extraordinary inequity we have between, three of the billionaires, the richest billionaires, own as much as half of the American population, 170 million people. So there are many ways to do it.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Maybe Siri has a solution. Graham Boyd brought up lovely architecture vision. What are you already seeing as the structural engineering, the structures, processes, et cetera, to be able to build a fiat economy?
Again, the very first thing we've got to do is build the vision. We've got to get lots and lots of people getting excited and asking the kind of question you're asking. And clearly, there's huge movements to protect the environment. There's huge arguments about the truth, and we're terrified by the conspiracy theories that come down, many of us. And in corporations, we've had this movement in the B Corps, for instance, where they're actually trying to institutionalize within their corporations something that supports people, planet, and profit. I'm adding truth and democracy to those two things as well, which I think will make it even stronger. So the beginnings are there, but we've got to get the vision out. And if we get lost in debating around how do you do this or how do you do that, we're not going to get there to the vision. The vision, that one of the things we say in life planning is the vision of a client, and I think the vision of humanity should be so extraordinary that it lights up the night sky. You know, it's got to be huge. And then we've got to, so we have the responsibility to paint that vision and say, what would it be like? What would you get? And maybe we go from here. Should we go from here to the breakout?
Well, I was just gonna add, this is Darby, if I can. This is, of course, a wonderful dialogue, and congratulations, George, for always carrying the gauntlet forward for all of us. I think a couple of things that has been running through my mind since this all came across the transom. I know some of you know, and you're contributors to the book that we're all working on, of which George is a piece of that, Stefan, Graham, and others. And we put in your fiat and we put in your golden civilization. At the same time, I think I shared with Laura, there have been a number of MBA oaths that have been in sort of production over the last 20, 30 years, whether it's Harvard's or out at Arizona State Thunderbird. But again, they're not followed up on. They're there, right, to sort of give a seal, but there's no fortitude. There's no one can talk about these oaths. No one can be conversant into what has happened to those graduates that took the oath. And I think that's a missing link. And so you bring up the B Corps. These are all pieces of the puzzle, right? You're trying to galvanize all that has come before and take it further. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity in that movement, whether we create a committee, that you lead, that has representation of these other organizations and benefits. I think that could be possibly a start. Certainly the academic community gives credence to it. Whether they reinforce it is a different issue. And then obviously, as you're mentioning, all the institutions and businesses, whether they're conscious capital businesses or not, this is something to seed over time. But it may be that the arms and legs to this seed into different sectors that are already doing pieces, but they're not doing it in a galvanized way. And you can lead that effort, which is woefully inadequate at this point.
So Darby, I love your work, and I love your thoughts right there. Those are extraordinary, and thank you for that contribution. And I want to remind everybody, if you have questions, to put them in the chat, because it'd be really wonderful to share all together. Darby, I hope we'll be able to implement a number of the things you're describing. And what I want to do, as I say, the first thing is to inspire the vision and to make it a mass movement. That's really what I think requires. And that may be gathering these groups together, but I think of it even more as gathering humanity together. So how do we get the message out there? But I think that the main thing that I want to say is that the way this works is we build the dream, and we find a dream that is so vivid for us that we paint the picture inside of ourselves. And I think the question, and Laura, do we have time for this question to do a bit of a breakout?
Yeah, I think we have 10 minutes that we can
Okay,
do
good.
breakouts.
So the question is, how would you benefit? What would change for you if fiat was the law of the land? It's a great question to think about and to ask people if you're trying to spread what this message is. What would it mean to you? What does it mean to you? But how would your life change? So so what we'd like to do is go into breakouts with 3 or 4 of you, and in each breakout, and hopefully give each of you a chance to share.
Yep. Okay. So you're going to be sent into a room. There's either going to be 3 or 4 people. And so we ask that you each kind of honor each other by allowing each person to speak and answer those questions. And I'll give you kind of 3-minute warnings.
And one more thing just to be aware of, we are going to set up community-wide meetings, steering committee and a support group for this kind of work that will hopefully adopt some of the things Darby was suggesting as well. So, but what would this mean for you? So what we'd like to do is hear from each group that was there. One person maybe share what you thought were the main themes that you heard. And then we'll have a little time for closing. Anybody want to share what you heard in your group?
I'll go first.
Yeah, hey, Sue.
If that's okay.
Mhm.
Our group struggled with the truth and the perception of the truth based on people's beliefs, and the struggle with how do we get the truth out there, and the fact that there is truth in 2 different sides of beliefs. So there's a conflict, there's a struggle to how to actually get there, even if getting there would be beneficial for everyone.
Cool. Cool. Thank you, Sue. And I really look forward to that discussion. And I was hoping that people would be thinking about how this would be for them, rather than thinking of the obstacles. Who else would like to share? It looks like Blair, have you?
Oh, wasn't actually raising, but I will share.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of sharing around like the lifting of anxieties that we probably didn't even realize were there. And also in being able to, from someone who acts as a fiduciary, to just to know how much more, Byron, tell me if I'm speaking out of line, how much more could be accomplished as we interact with others, whether it's through commerce or however, knowing that that person is acting as a fiduciary in the power of basically what more could be accomplished.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Blair. Another group, Julian. Yeah.
Great to have met up with Doyle. Our sense was that to have a really strong ideal for all would mean we'd have more faith in our institutions. We wouldn't have to hide so much. We'd be guided, stimulated to be the best we can be, and by heavens, we need that. And we'd no longer have to be the loyal opposition, having to take people on and divide and oppose. Yeah, there's a few things.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Julian. Another group.
Yeah, I'll make a statement. Sorry, I'm on side.
And identify, is it Jeff?
Jeff.
Hey,
Yes.
Jeff. Yeah, good.
Yes. Our group focused on what we can learn from those who are already living in a fiduciary economy, and it's around the world. The people organize into small groups and they're saving money and moving their lives forward. And there's over 500 million with lots of innovation, and they're doing this every day with millions. And there was 2 of us in the group that had somebody from South Africa that lived in South Africa that also had this experience of Stokefelds. So that's an enormous amount we can already learn from others doing it, and then we can tell that experience to the world, and that might help move your agenda forward slightly.
Beautiful, Jeff. I love the work you're doing, and thank you so much for sharing the perspective of the group as well. Another group, is there someone else?
I guess I could go, George. We had 1 from England, 2 from the United States. It was interesting with just ideas, or what we popped up with, but it was For instance, Hunter, maybe there are requirements before you're able to get on the exchanges. Maybe there's something that can pop there to get them on the exchange. And with David from England, different kinds of things, because directors over there have to have a fiduciary responsibility, and it was a little different. But are there other places, other countries, what's going on in Singapore, for instance, where we can have some examples? And maybe it's going to take one corporation with 4 principles that they just announced they're going to live by, and people can see that it's possible. So there might be something to that effect.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Mary. How much time we got? We're probably at the end of time. Laura, do you think? Yeah. So let me say again, thank you so much for coming, first of all. And we are going to we'll have a survey coming out. We're going to be meeting our next meeting for what we're calling the steering committee. And all that is people who really want to be engaged is in a couple of weeks, December 17th at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to have at least 2 meetings a month. One will be for just to support people who are either engaged in fiat work or engaged in good work around the world, fiduciary work. And the other meeting will be what we're calling a steering committee, where we're trying to move things actively forward ourselves, engaged. And but I just want to say, for me, this is, I wasn't able to share it so much because of the crazy stuff that began it with my computer and everything. But this is a movement of joy for me. This isn't a movement of obstacles, of polarization. It's a movement of joy. It's a movement of delight. It's a movement of optimism. It's a movement of hope. And that's the perspective that I want to keep reminding for myself, using the first domain of freedom and the second domain of freedom to help me be in those places. But I think that helps to build this rather than being, oh gosh, how are we going to do this? Let's share this incredible vision of what it could be and share it together and broaden that base. Please join us going forward any way you can. Love to see you again. Love to see all of you again, and be in touch in any way you feel like would be helpful. Thank you so much.